I'm Nick Pettit.
I'm Jason Seifer.
And you're watching the Treehouse Show, your weekly dose of internet where we talk about all things web design, web development, and more.
For a free month's trial of Treehouse, join us over at teamtreehouse.com/show. In this episode, we'll be talking about responsive logos, waves, Pagekit, and more.
Let's check it out. First up are responsive logos. Now, if you've been watching the show, which I don't plan to...
I haven't.
If you haven't, responsive design is, of course, a technique where you can make the same code work on multiple different screen resolutions. The idea of responsive logos is to take responsive design and apply it to logo design. So here we have a couple of popular logos for major consumer brands. And I have the browser at full screen here, but if I resize the browser downwards, oops, that's moving it. If I resize the browser downwards, you'll see that those logos actually get smaller, but not just smaller, they actually change their design to be more appropriate for that particular size. So I'll scroll down here, take a look at the Disney logo here, or the Levi logo.
Nick, do you have a folder on your desktop called Desktop?
I do. That's where I keep my desktop.
Good call. Desktopception.
That's right. We have to go Desktopper.
Next up, we have a project called Waves. Waves is a project that lets you add click and hover effects to buttons that are inspired by Google's material design. Now, we have a demo over here on the page. So here we have some flat buttons called A, B, C, and D, respectively. You'll notice I'm just hovering, but when I click, whoa, look at that. Look at that. We get some visual feedback that something was clicked, that something was the button. And that works across all these different buttons here. And you can see we've got different styles of buttons, and the effect still works depending on the button style. Plain icons work, colored icons work, and it's not limited to just buttons and icons. This effect works on divs, boxes, even images.
And you'll notice that it actually has an origin that's the same as your mouse. So if
I didn't notice that, but that is cool.
If you click on different parts of the image,
I'm doing that right now.
It will create the effect from where you clicked.
Let's click at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Oh, there. Wow.
Bam.
What just happened? Was that in the G.I. Joe movie?
Amazing.
Or is this a website? So this was inspired by Google's material design documents that just recently came out. And here is how easy it is to get started. You just add the class Waves effect and Waves button to your element and include the JavaScript and then call waves.displayEffect, and you are good to go. So that's it. You can restyle this if you want to. We'll have a link in the show notes, which you can get to at youtube.com/GoTreehouse. You can also search for us on iTunes. We're the Treehouse Show. And of course, don't forget to check us out at teamtreehouse.com/show.
Very cool stuff. Well, next up is a new CMS called Pagekit. CMS, of course, stands for Content Management System. So if you're creating a website, you probably have content that needs managing, and Pagekit does exactly that. Of course, there are other content management systems out there, WordPress being one of them. But personally, I never actually liked using WordPress as a CMS. I know a lot of people do, but I always felt like it was more so for blogging. So I kind of am liking Pagekit a lot because it's specifically designed for creating websites. So let's jump over to features here. There's a dashboard. You can, of course, create a blog or pages just like you can with WordPress and many other popular CMSs. You can have widgets. So here's like a sidebar widget where you can rearrange things. A lot of features that might be familiar to you if you've used any kind of CMS in the past. There's, of course, really great documentation here which you can check out. So you can click on like widgets, for example, and see exactly how to structure those. Anyway, I thought this was really, really smart and definitely a great new entry into the world of CMSs.
Yeah, and it's not bad looking either.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Dig the design. Next up, while you're developing the site that you have in your CMS, make sure to check out DevDocs. DevDocs combines multiple different sources of documentation into one easily searchable website. So right here you can see there is a search bar at the top of the screen, and if I just start typing in something I want to look up for documentation, like let's say table, this will pull up the different documentation for all the different documentation that I have selected. Now, if I click on the home button right here and this little burger menu, which is delicious, you can choose from all of this different documentation that the website will search through. Now, you'll notice there's this disabled tab right here. It is only going to be searching and auto-completing from the documentation that I have selected up here. So CSS, DOM, DOM events, HTML, HTTP, and JavaScript. If you want to enable something else, you can scroll all the way down and hit Select Documentation, and at that point you get checkboxes for the other documentation you want to search through. Click Save. It will download the documentation, and it is very responsive when you type it in. You'll see I selected the Ruby documentation, and now I have access to all of the different documentation for these methods. Anyway, this is great. You can check it out at DevDocs.io. It's really nice if you need to look up some documentation.
Very nice stuff. Well, next up over on the Opera blog is a wonderful blog post about responsive images. In Chromium 37, Firefox Nightly, and in WebKit, the picture element is starting to come along. And basically, this is an element that allows you to create responsive images a lot more easily. There's also some new attributes for the image element. So if you want to give those a try, you can try out, of course, those browsers, Chromium 37, Firefox Nightly, and WebKit. And basically, when you're implementing one of these things, you have to ask yourself these 4 questions. Do my image sizes change depending on my responsive design rules? Do I want to optimize for high DPI screens? Do I want to serve my images with different MIME types to browsers that support them? And do I want to serve different art depending on certain contextual factors? So for example, one use case might be if you're resizing the browser, perhaps at smaller sizes, you only want to show a part of the image that's maybe the most important part. But if the browser is much wider, maybe you want to show a more zoomed out version of that same image. So based on those 4 questions, this blog post goes into detail about how you might implement each one of those things or achieve different goals. So if you want to maybe serve up different image types or different MIME types and then maybe art direct them a little bit, this might be an example of the code that you might want to use. Anyway, this is a really detailed blog post, and I really like it because it breaks down the picture element and these new image attributes, which can be pretty complex if you've never worked with them before. So it's really nice to have good examples.
Speaking of breaking down, we promised ourselves we wouldn't when the show ended. Nick, who are you on Twitter?
I am at NickRP.
And I am at Jason Seifer. For more information on anything we talked about, check out the show notes at youtube.com/GoTreehouse. You can also search for us on iTunes. We are the Treehouse Show.
And of course, if you'd like to see more videos like this one about web design, web development, mobile business, and so much more, be sure to check us out at teamtreehouse.com/show for a free 30-day trial. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.